Okay. I understand. I get the message loud and clear. It's time for the Kim and Kim sales analysis. That's right, we're going to look at the Kim and Kim series, all three of them, and actually do an analysis on the sales. Let's take a look at those numbers. Well, issue 1 started out just a hair under 9,000, but as you can see, the series ultimately curved down to just over 3,000 by the time the 4-issue series had finished. And when we came back for the one-shot special, and then the next series, the sales continued to drift down.
Stop it! Right now.
All right, Hellboy. Now, some very faithful fans have been asking for a Hellboy sales analysis for what feels like the entire life of this channel. And weirdly, as you'll see by the time we get to the end of it, that dedication and determination is sort of indicative of the actual Hellboy sales and fan base. But let's take a look at what we've got. First off, Hellboy as a series, you may have forgotten, it launched with Dark Horse Comics under this little imprint called Legend. And this was something where John Byrne, Art Adams, and others kind of trying to do something similar to Image, but not, went and kind of did the titles they always wanted to do. In John Byrne's case, we got Next Men. Art Adams' case, we got Monkey Man and O'Brien. But the one that has by far stood the test of time was launched in March of 1994, and that was from Mike Mignola, and John Byrne actually helped with the script, believe it or not, at least on the first issue, or the first run, I should say, and that was a little arc called Seed of Destruction. So if we look at the big sales, you look at this big picture, we're going to go into it and kind of all the elements. Issue number 1 of Hellboy, that issue that launched in 1994, March, Seed of Destruction, issue number 1, launched at a very respectable 76,234 copies. Quite nice at the time. Now, keep in mind, there's a lot of excitement going on with indie comics. People were at least speculating, Michael Mignola, John Byrne, they were not quite at the same buzz level, certainly, as the Rob Liefelds, Todd McFarlane's, and Jim Lee at that particular moment in 94. But still, there was a lot of attention. Comic shops were excited about it, and they didn't want to lose out on the idea of Image 2.0, as sad as that might sound. So we had 4 issues. The 4th issue in this arc dropped to 68,230. Now, if you've been watching the other sales analysis videos, you'll notice that a drop of 76,000 to 68,000, in other words, basically 8,000 copies from issue 1 to issue 4, is awesome. Comic publishers today would kill for that kind of drop rate. That's very, very low. I mean, there were plenty of speculators. I mean, this is the 90s. There were tons of speculators back then. The speculator market, nearly bankrupted the entire industry. And yet, the people who came on for issue 1, by and large, the issue stuck around for issue 4. So in this first arc, quite respectable. Nothing wrong with that. And, it would basically be more than a year before we got another copy, before issue 5 came out. It would be quite a long run before another issue. So you had these 4 issues come out and it went quiet for more than a year, and it's stuck in this level. Now, as you could tell, let's talk about this first arc before we get into anything, because I think it really does kind of give a good flavor of what went on. So on average, these first 4 issues sold 73,666. That's an ominous number, with only a modest drop. That's pretty impressive. Graphic novel sales of the first arc continue to do well. It's been 28 years since this came out. They continue to hold strength, and that's pretty cool too. Definitely a nice tip of the hat to how the longevity of this arc. Overall, I mean, right now, if you jump onto Amazon, you'll see that this 4-issue series from Michael Mignola back in 94 is still ranked at 178th in fantasy graphic novels. It's 123 in horror graphic novels. This is a category that has things like The Walking Dead and other stuff in it. I mean, for nearly a 30-year-old book, that's pretty nice. I mean, that's pretty good. They've come up with different editions over the years to kind of re-promote that. But look at the customer ratings are good. You can't, this is a success, definitely on the indie market. So now I want to step back and look at the entire run kind of as a whole, because unlike other arcs, and you'll see when we get to the actual dates, so much time passed between the way the issues dropped during this run that you really have to look at it a little differently. So what I've identified here is you see the little lines, the little arcs there, and then you see the single issues are just the triangles pointing to a single line. So you see that we had a couple single issue drops, and then you have these arcs. And typically what would happen with this series is the arc would basically be mostly done, not necessarily monthly, but at least somewhat close together. Sometimes there were pretty big gaps between issues. But once an arc was concluded, the series would take a decent sized break and then come back for another one. So if we look at this first arc, 73,666 on average, and you look at the second arc, now the second arc we had, the one thing to keep in mind here, yes, it's a steep drop from 73,000 to 31,000. But we're also talking about an arc, number one, that started in March of 94, and the second arc started in June of 96. Now, that's a little over 2 years, but a lot had happened in those 2 years. The comic market in general is starting to plummet right about now. The direct market is definitely taking a beating. And so, yes, it's a significant drop, but I don't think it's really the same as the drops we have today. I think there are a lot of market conditions that were going on here. And I think by this point in 96, not only were, nobody had any illusions this was going to be Image 2.0, but even some of the Image guys are starting to come back to Marvel to do Heroes Reborn. So the industry was in an odd spot. But if you look at how the arcs progressed from that 31,000 mark, the third one, 27,000, then 25,000, we get to 23,000. And what you're noticing here is several issues are going by, but more importantly, several years. When we get to this sixth arc at 25,213, we're at issue 21, and issue 21 is coming out in June of 2002. So we're 8 years later. So basically, we're 21 issues, 8 years have passed. And so what's remarkable is if you look at the way the rest of the arcs kind of progress, 30,000, 28,000, 26,000, 26,000 again, 21,000, 19,000, 18,000, 19,000. There's very little movement. To go from, basically the second arc, 31,000, down to one of the last arcs in the kind of the main run at 19,000. You're talking about 25 years have passed during this time period, and you're still getting this kind of connection to the title. That's very unusual that this is going to happen. So, take that big look back. It's this steep drop from this initial arc where all the buzz was, and then you see a remarkably stable audience. So, over the main run, the title averaged 27,702 unit sales per issue. So 27,000. But you might say to yourself, okay, that 27,000, those first 4 issues really tilt that number. Well, the answer is not really. If you take out that first arc, you just eliminate that from the math, you're going from 27 to 24. It's not a big difference. 3,000 copies, it basically speaks to the fact that this run is remarkably stable. So even the fact that you had these 4 big issues at the front, it's not changing the average very much because everything else is, it hits its audience mark and stays there. The one and done issues, if you're looking at those tended to drag down the overall series in terms of sales. By this, I mean just the average. The arcs tended to have more interest. They had the same kind of, first issue start strong and then decline that a lot of arcs do, but way, way less than what you see at the big 2. And so the single issues, some of them pop up, but in general, when they pop up, they're not popping up as high as you'd expect. So those one and done issues didn't do it as much favors as the arcs did, which I think the arcs is where you could say it really contributed to its stability over time. Again, slight decline, but for one of its bigger arcs here from issue 37 to 44, you're talking about a sales drop of 24,000 for the first issue to 18,900. It's basically 19,000. You're talking about a 5,000 issue, 5,000 copy drop between 7 issues. Look, Marvel and DC would kill for that. That's just relatively unheard of. So it's a different market. But what I want to draw your attention to here before we wrap this up is the dates. So I've been mentioning that a lot of time has passed during this thing. So you see the dates at the bottom, and I put these little lines here to show you the years that are passing. And what you see is this kind of almost remarkably stable, heartbeat of years that go by, where you're only getting a couple issues, not many issues at a time before, in the year. So it's interesting to kind of look at it this way. It's a comic that managed to hold its audience over the course of, as I said, about 20. You take that first arc out where you had a lot of speculators, 26 years, and the audience doesn't really go anywhere. So that's pretty impressive. So with only a few issues a year, it makes sense. The momentum was slow but stable. The book got its core audience and then stuck there. So that's pretty nice. Now you might say, hey, what about the movies? How do the movies impact this title? Well, not at all, really. If you look here, you see Hellboy 1 and 2, 2004, 2008. This is when they came out. You look at the corresponding jump on sales. Nah, not at all. Even the bump that you see there in the second movie in 2008 had nothing to do with the movie. That was the first issue of an arc. So the movie's completely disconnected from the comics by and large. And then the more recent film out in 2019 is just kind of off the page there. So it's also worth noting. So I took you through the main Hellboy site, series, but it's the numbering. First off, I just did the main series here. The numbering at times was completely ignored in favor of the arc, so it's sometimes even hard to get to the numbering. But there's also been a series, Hellboy in Hell, that averaged 20,294 in unit sales from 2012 2016. And also the series Hellboy and the BPRD, which is, I think, still going to, there's an issue in theory coming out in January. That averages 18,645. Really nothing different. All this stuff is the same. The summary here is the Hellboy audience is a Hellboy audience. They have a very consistent group of fans, the kind of fans that indie titles would kill for. So there you go. So that's Hellboy. Some final thoughts. As an indie book, generally speaking, Hellboy averages out higher than most and keeps them. So I think we could say two things. One, Hellboy is probably around the top 5% of indie books in terms of consistent sales. It's always possible for an indie title to come out. You get a big name creator on it. Donny Cates is doing this book Vanish. It's going to pop a big number. But let's check in on that book 28 years from now and see if it's still doing the same kind of numbers. It won't be. Spoiler. That's not a knock against Donnie. You name me. Some of the other books that have lasted that long. Walking Dead certainly hasn't. Saga hasn't. Those are more recent. Michael Mignola launched with John Byrne and Art Adams. I don't see Next Men continuing to be printed. So it's impressive. It lands in that coveted spot. No, it's not popping the 100,000 copies that a top-selling indie creator could get for one issue or two issues, but it also, get 28 years later, it's still printing money. So trade sales do very well. Hellboy does even better than most in that area. It has crossover appeal outside the direct market, and so you see a lot of pickup there. And just like the people who kept pestering me to do a sales analysis for Hellboy, the people who buy this book stay with this book. The title features very little drop off, and that's what's notable about it. So there you go. I hope you're happy. We finally did the Hellboy sales analysis. Everybody can go home now. We can actually shut down the channel. We've done it. We finally accomplished that. And I know we'll get lots of likes and people subscribe to the channel. Everybody is thrilled. There won't be anything else like this, right?
Best entertainment on the earth. Tune in for Comics with Perch.